Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're doing a Beetrooper Battlewasp deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this with you guys because we just got Beetroopers out of Dawn of Majesty, and it is an absolutely insane deck right out of the gate. I'm really excited to see what they do in future sets for support for this deck, because this deck out of the gate is already topping, and it is an absolutely insane deck when you mix it in with Battlewasp. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can come part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name searched in a single video, getting signed cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron, along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Battlewasp Pin the Bullseye, which is actually my favorite of all of the Battlewasps because I think he's just adorable. He has the ability that if you control an insect monster, you can just special summon this card from your hand, and then during the main phase, you can inflict 200 damage to your opponent for each Battlewasp Pin the Bullseye you control. You can affect this card once per turn, which is a really good card to just be able to get you an additional monster on the field to use as link materials. We then play 3 copies of Sting the Poison. Sting the Poison is also a very powerful card, which is actually a tuner for this deck as well. It has the ability, if this card is normal or special summon, you get to add a Battlewasp monster from your deck to your hand, except another copy of itself. And you can also quick effect tribute another insect monster to target effect monster your opponent controls and negate its effects until the end phase of the turn, which is a really powerful, really good effect for this deck. We then play 2 copies of Twin Bow the Attacker. Twin Bow the Attacker is also a really good card that during the main phase you can special summon this card from your hand, but you cannot special summon monsters from your extra deck for the rest of the turn except for insect monsters. You can only affect this card once per turn. And this card can make a second attack during each battle phase, but it just has 1,000 attack points, so usually you're just going to special summon this card and use it as a material for a link summon or another play. We then play a single copy of Arbalest. Arbalest is just a good one-up to me because when this card is normal summon, you get to target a level 3 or lower insect monster in the graveyard and special summon that monster in defense position. If this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, then you get to special summon a Battlewasp monster from your hand or deck, except another copy of itself, which we only play 1 copy, so it's not that big of a deal. So that's it for the Battlewasp. For the Beetroopers, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Beetrooper Scout Buggy. Beetrooper Scout Buggy is an insanely good card. When this card is normal summoned or special summoned, you get to special summon 1 Beetrooper Scout Buggy from your hand, deck, or graveyard. You can only select this card once per turn, but you can't special summon monsters except for insect monsters while this card's on the field, which is not that big of a deal because a lot of the stuff that you're going to be summoning from the extra deck anyways, actually like 90% of the stuff that you're going to be summoning from the extra deck is going to be insect monsters. We then play 3 copies of Beetrooper Scale. Scale is really good in the deck too. It has the ability if an insect monster is normal or special summoned to your field, then you can special summon this card from your hand, and when a monster your opponent controls activates effect, quick effect, you can tribute an insect monster and destroy that card. This card is a really good card as a tech card in any insect deck, and is just really good in this particular deck because it's a level 3 and you can make XZ plays with it, you can make Link plays with it, and it basically special summons itself pretty much for free. We then play 3 copies of Sting Lancer as well. Sting Lancer is a really good card in this deck as well because basically it has the ability that during the main phase, quick effect, you can target an insect monster in your graveyard and a monster on your opponent's graveyard, special summon this target from your hand, and then if you do, place the targeted monster on the bottom of the deck or bottoms of the decks. And if this card is normal or special summoned, then you get to add a Beetrooper spell or trap from your deck to your hand, which there is a lot of really good so far Beetrooper targets to actually search with this card, and it's a 2400 attack point monster that can just basically special summon it by putting cards back on the bottom of the deck. It's a really good 3 of. We then play 3 copies of Resonant Insect. Resonant Insect is so good in this deck because it has the ability that if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add a level 5 or higher insect monster from your deck to your hand. And if this card is banished, you can send an insect monster from your deck to the graveyard as well. This card is really good because it just basically lets you normal summon this card out to your field, link it away, and for a card, and then basically add a level 5 or higher insect monster from your deck to your hand, which can be your copy of your Sting or one of the other monsters we're playing in this deck. We then play 3 copies of Retaliating Sea. Retaliating Sea is really insane in this deck. You got to play 3 copies of this card. It has the ability that during either player's turn when your opponent activates a spell card that includes the effect to special summon a monsters, and then you can special summon this card from your hand. And if summoned this way, while this card is face up on the field, any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead. And if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you get to add an earth insect type monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck to your hand, except another copy of itself, which is a really powerful effect just to be able to get you a search, especially summon this card to your side of the field. And while this card's faceable on the field, any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead. It basically is a walking macrocosmos, which is just really, really good. We then play 3 copies of Contact C. Contact C, I just play as a 2 of in this build. You don't want to play 3 copies of it because it bricks a little bit, but 2 copies is totally fine. I did consider cutting it down to 1 because it's searchable for other cards in deck, but currently I'm playing 2 copies of it. It has the ability that when your opponent normally special summons a monster, then you can special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's side of the field in defense position, and the controller of this card cannot fusion, synchro, XZ, or link summon unless they use this card as a material. So your opponent has to use this card as a material in order to summon anything at all, which can really shut down your opponent, which is why I play it at 2 right now. I did play it at 3, it bricked at 3, I played it at 1, I didn't see it enough, but I could search it when I needed it, so I did consider leaving it at 1, but I finally just settled on 2 and found that 2 was the best way to play it. We then play the same copy of Gokipole. Gokipole is just kind of good in here because it has some recursion abilities that if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add a level 4 insect monster from your deck or deck to your hand. Then if you added a normal monster, you can special summon it, which you don't play normal monsters. So basically just adding the card from deck to hand is the big effect of this card that you're going to be rolling through a lot. We then play 2 copies of Worm Warrior as well. Worm Warrior is basically a free special summon by banishing an insect monster from your graveyard, which is a really good effect. 1 copy of Doomdozer, because Doomdozer can banish 2 monsters from the graveyard that are insects to special summon this card to your side of the field, which is really, really good. The mill effect is not that great on this card because you're not going to want to send a card from the top of your opponent's deck to the graveyard, but being able to just summon a 2800 beat stick is just really good. Then we play a single copy of Kamungus, because Kamungus is really good. This can be a Gandarla if you want to summon out Gandarla as well to deal with your barrier statues of Stormwinds, but this card is really good to just be able to summon to your side of the, or opponent's side of the field to out certain cards, and it's also searchable, which is really good. So that's it for the monsters, guys. That is a lot of monsters for this particular deck, but you need all of these monsters for the deck to function. So for the spells, we're just going to be playing a couple of spells in here. We're going to be playing a single copy of Beetrooper Formation. Beetrooper Formation is just a 1-up to me. It's a really good card because it lets you target a Beetrooper monster in the graveyard and special summon it, but it can't attack this turn. And also you lose life points equal to the monster's original attack. Which can be a lot. It can be up towards of 2400. It can be as little as whatever Beetrooper Scout Buggy's attack is. Like, it can be very little. It can be very, very small amounts. Because Beetrooper Scout Buggy only has 1000. It can be your copy of Scale, which has 1200, or it can be your copy of Sting if you're trying to revive something big for 2400, which is a lot that you're going to be taking for the damage for that card. But it's really good to just give you those monsters on the field. But it also helps you out with link plays as well, because it has the ability that if a face of insect monster control is destroyed by battle or by card effect, you just special summon a Beetrooper token to your side of the field that's a level 3, 1000, 1000, which helps you out a lot to go in for different link plays. We then play a single copy of Foolish Burial, because Foolish Burial will send your cards that you need to the graveyard when you need them in the graveyard, so it helps out a lot. Then I play a single copy of Harpy's Feather Duster, because something as I was playtesting this deck that I noticed was this deck had a really tough time with back row, and so by dropping your copies of Harpy's Feather Duster in the deck, it just helps out the deck so much to just hit back row decks. So this card helps out a lot with 2 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. The Cosmic Cyclones are here because, again, the deck has a really tough time with back row, and so these cards really help out a lot to just be able to hit the back row that your opponent's playing, and then go into your insane plays like your Invincible Atlas, that's just going to be able to take games by storm. Then we play 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More, because again, I feel like this deck has a big problem with monster effects sometimes, and being able to just out your opponent's entire board is really good, because your opponent establishes a board and they negate a couple of your cards, you're going to have a little bit of a tough time, but being able to play Dark Ruler No More and your Harpy's Feather Duster, you shouldn't have any problems with this deck, especially if you draw in your copies of Dark Ruler No More and Harpy's Feather Duster. Being able to just stop monster effects and then being able to hit the back row in this way is the best way that I found to play this deck, and it helps out a lot to main deck these cards. So that's it for these spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. We only play a single copy of a trap card in this deck, which is a single copy of Beetrooper Fly Sting. Beetrooper Fly Sting is a really good counter trap that has the ability that when your opponent activates a monster effect, while you control a Beetrooper monster, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it, and then during the end phase, if this card's in the graveyard and you control an insect monster with 3000 or more attack, you can banish 1 insect monster from your graveyard and then set this card back to your field. You can only use 1 Beetrooper Flying Sting effect per turn, and only once that turn, which is a very powerful counter trap that is just constantly recurring itself. As long as you have a monster that has 3000 attack on your side of the field, this card is really, really good. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're gonna be playing 2 copies of Giant Beetrooper Invincible Atlas. Invincible Atlas is an insanely good boss monster for this deck, and just about for any insect deck. Like, this card is going to become a staple for any insect deck. It requires 2 insect monsters to summon this card, and then when this card is link summoned, has 3,000 or more attack, which is going to be always. Your opponent cannot target this card with card effects, and also cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects either. And you cannot special summon monsters except for insect monsters, which again is not that big of a deal because everything we're summoning is insects anyways. And then you contribute an insect monster to activate one of these effects, to either special summon a Beetrooper monster from your deck, or this card gains an additional 2,000 attack until the end phase, going to 5,000 attack points. Like a link 4 that can be summoned for 5,000 attack points at the tribute of a monster. Yes, please. I'll take 2, thanks. We then play 3 copies of Beetrooper Armorhorn. Armorhorn is really good in this deck as well. It has the ability that you can special summon monsters except for insect monsters. You use the effect of this card once per turn, and then during your main phase, you can immediately let this card resolves, normal summon 1 insect monster. And if this card is in your graveyard, you can banish 3 insect monsters from your graveyard and special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field, which helps you link climb a little bit to go into some additional plays. And just banishing 3 insects is not that big of a deal because a lot of times you're not reviving your insects anyways. We then play 3 copies of Papillon. This card is really good because it's a link 3 in the deck as well, because you can climb into this card later in the game with your copy of your other Beetrooper monster. It basically has to take 2 monsters that have different names. It gains 200 attack for each card counter on it, and then you can activate the effect of this card that if this card is link summoned, you place a counter on it for each insect monster uses link material, which is usually going to be 2 to 3 that you're going to use for this card. And then quick effect, you can move a counter from this card to special summon a level 4 lower insect monster from your graveyard defense, which is going to be a lot of different ones that you can actually summon out this card. And then play 2 copies of the Inzektor Link monster. This card is really good to flip cards back into the deck, which is really, really nice. I love this card in the deck because you can just target 3 of your insect monsters, shuffle them into the deck, and then draw a card, which is really, really good to be able to recur your cards. I play a single copy of the new Shinobi Insect. The new Shinobi Insect is kind of nice in this deck. I like it as a one-of. I wouldn't play it at any more than one, but what this card basically does is while this card points to a monsters, your opponent's monsters cannot target this card with attacks, and if a monster this card points to is destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can special summon a level 4 lower insect monster from your hand or graveyard, but banish when it leaves the field, which is a really good effect just to help you get some recursion. We then play a single copy of Alamirage because you can normal summon out your copy of Resonant Insect and then link it away for this card, which is really, really nice. 1 copy of Access Code because it gets you additional pops, which is really, really good. I play double Cicada King number 3. This card's really good in the deck too because it gives you additional negations. Because it has the ability that if the battle position of this card is changed, you can special summon 1 insect monster from your hand or graveyard in defense position, and then when a monster on the field activates its effect, you need to attach a material, target that monster, negate its effects, make an insect monster on the field, either gain 500 defense or change his battle position, which is really good to be able to just immediately change his battle position and negate a monster effect. I really like that effect. I will say, if you guys don't want to play the Access Code Talker, because you're trying to play this deck a little bit more budgetly, you can drop the Access Code Talker if you want to for like a Boral Sword or another copy of Invincible Atlas if you want to play 3 copies of it. It is an option for you guys. I like the Access Code Talker. It's going to get reprinted soon, but it's totally up to you. We then play a single copy of Ballista the Armageddon. I wanted to play at least one of the Battlewasp Synchro cards, and this is the best one of them all because it has an insanely good effect that if this card is special summoned, you manage all insect monsters from graveyard, and all monsters your opponent can currently control lose 500 attack for each monster that's banished and that by this effect. And it has the ability also, or every insect that's banished actually, not by this effect. And it also has the ability that if this card attacks defense position monster, inflicts piercing damage, and if it's synchro monster and you control, and its owner's control is destroyed by opponent's card, then you can special summon 3 of your banished insects that are level 11 or lower, which is really good that if this card is destroyed by an opponent's card effect or by opponent's card, then you just get back 3 of your insect monsters to go in additional plays. I really like the way this deck came out. It's a really awesome deck, but that's it for the deck, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Definitely tell me what you think of this deck down in the comments down below. If you play it this way, it's not super crazy expensive. Now, the buggies are like $10 a piece currently, $10 to $12 a piece, but it's not super crazy because the Battlewasp stuff is so cheap, and it's a really fun deck to play around with. I highly recommend that you guys have not tried to play Battlewasps with your copy of your Beetroopers yet. You definitely should, because this deck is just crazy. And as the new support gets released, hopefully in the next set, because I'm hoping that they're going to continue this one and not do like they did with Mutants where they just dropped it. this deck is just going to keep getting better and better. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can come part of notifications. And we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.